Yay.
Give it a second to come up. I think you should be good there, Vero. Maybe, possibly.
Yeah.
What? God damn you!
What?
I just saw it go live, but the graphic hasn't changed yet.
Okay. Or not. Why do you hate me so?
Twitch is
Technical problems.
Okay, they don't hear anything yet.
We're having technical issue. Why isn't it working? Oh, they can hear us.
Someone can hear us. Okay. Awesome.
Oh, they can hear us.
Okay.
Still says we're all fine.
Well, it appears.
If it comes up, you're just gonna see my X split, not the call right now.
Yeah, it's up.
There it is.
I don't see anything.
Work.
Well,
It still hasn't loaded for me.
Work.
Do we need to
It
tell
hasn't
I know,
people?
I feel left out.
Well,
I don't see anything.
we'll get there eventually. How about we go ahead and start?
Woo! We're up. We're live.
I still don't see
Yep,
anything.
we're up.
Okay,
I
we're
thought I got
good.
it.
Oh, okay.
Go
I
ahead,
see it
Vero.
now.
And then silence. Pharaoh?
I don't see anything. Okay, so welcome to Out of Mana. We are a group of healers that met through the World of Warcraft forums, and this is kind of our little podcast that we decided to start. Hey, I see the graphic now. That's awesome. So today is just the first episode. It's just going to be very laid back. It's just going to be us kind of introducing ourselves to you guys, let you know who we are and what classes we play, and kind of a little information about us. And then we have some questions that we got over the last week, which we will answer, and then if you guys have any questions in the chat, we'll try and monitor that and answer those as well. Is there anyone that wants to volunteer to introduce themselves first, or
I'll
do you
go
guys
first.
want me to go first?
I'll go first.
Okay, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Shamiran, also known as Chris, also known as the technical guy for this stream. I play a shaman, obviously, by my name, and I've been playing World of Warcraft for 8 years. Started out as a tank, went to DPS, finally found my niche in healing, and then, you know, met all these crazy people. So, yeah. Who wants to go next?
I'll go next. I am Milk Me Softly. I am a female Tauren priest on Bladefist.
Blasphemy.
I started playing, well, Jessica would be my name, so I started playing World of Warcraft back when Burning Crusade came out. My brother introduced me to it. Started out as a hunter, went to priest, fell in love with priests, so I started healing dungeons as Shadow. Tried that in Wrath, really bad idea. And then I went to Holy, so here I am.
First,
Who wants
go
to go
ahead.
next?
Who's next?
Joe, you go
I
next.
go.
Okay, fine. I'll go next. I'm Morin. I started about a month after BC launched. I was originally a Feral Druid tank. Then I switched to Elemental Shaman, and in Cataclysm decided I wanted to try something new and tried a Priest, and since then I have level 90 of all healers, but I still main actually 2 Disc Priests for raiding. So that's me. Next.
I'm Aiko. My name's actually Jordan. I picked up World of Warcraft during Wrath of the Lich King at the tail end of it during ICC after getting injured from where I was a college athlete. I started out as a hunter, got to 80, eventually ended up leveling a priestess and all because I wanted to play Shadow and have a dot class. I got dragged into playing Disc on Lich King progression and kind of fell in love with the spec. Ended up staying with my hunter for T11, took time off, came back, and found a raid spot as a Disc Priest. And then was asked to switch to a Wrestler Shaman for this current tier.
And now you're a mage.
And now he's a mage.
Yeah.
And then he'll be a priest again.
Uh,
He has an
I'm Frozen
identity
Orange.
crisis.
I started out as a druid in vanilla, following the advice of a friend. It was like, healing over time is really good, and anyway, what he meant to say was that they wanted another innervate for their raid. I stuck with the druid, although I was mostly playing as a bear until sometime in BC. Went to Resto and Moonkin a little bit for being overpowered in arena and to fill a non-tank spot for raids. Went off and on a bit through Cataclysm, really. At least to the... I didn't play in tier 11, although I did level up my priest sometime during Wrath. My priest is currently my main for raiding, but I'm still a druid at heart.
Isn't that sweet?
Oh, shut up.
I guess I'll go because why not? My name is Mist. I am formerly known as the Shaman Rain, formerly known as Renixie, formerly known as Truey, formerly known as Raynor. I have played as many names as that is, only 3 characters in my history of playing WoW for 8 years. I was originally a Resto Druid for going on 6 years before I got really, really mad at progressing through Old War and I quit WoW. And then this guy from my old realm convinced me to reroll Resto Shaman for ICC progression, and then it was kind of all downhill from there because I developed the worst ego ever, and now I play a monk, and I play with the Guild Simple Math of Enderhall, and I'm a very good player.
Talk about identity crisis.
Talk
Start
about
mine was bad.
identity.
Yeah, seriously, you have any more formally knowns in there?
Actually,
Probably.
yes, but we're not going to go there.
There's our hour and a
I guess
half.
I could add
Rain
in
introducing
myself,
himself.
formerly known as Devil Cat, which is now Shroud.
But we
Formerly
have to-
known as...
Okay, because he's in here too, and he's better than me.
Alright, so I'm Storming Ira, my name is Raymond, and I've been playing a shaman since Wrath of the Lich King. I started playing the game casually, and while leveling I fell in love with Resto. It's an amazing spec.
Yes.
And I started raiding casually about halfway through Wrath during TOC, until I joined a raiding guild in ICC, and then from there just went up the progression ladder, and that's what I've done.
Aren't you?
I sure am.
And I think I'm last. I am Vero. My character name is Vero Ikane. Don't worry, you probably already said it wrong, and that's all right. Everybody else does. I main a Restoration Druid, mainly focused in PvP currently because my old server kind of sucked. I play on Darkspear as Alliance. I've probably been Horde and Alliance way too many times, but I started playing originally in Burning Crusade, and I was probably one of the worst players in the entire world. I still might be, I'm not really sure. But I fell in love with healing in Wrath of the Lich King, and ever since then I've been a druid healer. I've also played Disc, Holy, Paladin, and a whole bunch of others. And I am also our residential graphic designer, I guess, for this podcast-topia world that we have started.
Honestly, Vera, I think most of us have played every healer spec at least once.
That's
Almost.
because we
Almost
are
every.
insane,
I mean,
and
I've played everything.
we
I've only gotten
love healers more than we should.
I've only gotten low-level Mistweaver down, but I mean, I've played at least everyone.
And
Yeah,
the Sweeper's 92.
I mean,
All of
Mine's
my characters are
35 until I
90.
can be stuck
I
there,
have
to be honest.
92.
90 also missed. I'm going to slap
Damn,
you.
hacks, Joe.
Damn.
85
can't
Druid, 85 Shaman.
I can't level my monk any higher because I'm leveling with a guildie who currently isn't playing his monk, so it's kind of hard to, talk about high-level monk fist weaving as when I'm only at like 50, I think.
Yeah. I think to get this ball going, because it's literally only been 11 minutes, I'm going to try to explain why I started playing Mistweaver. While being completely honest, and it's going to be very depressing for most of you.
And while he does that, the rest of us are actually going to walk away, get something to eat, and we'll be back in about
Take a
45
nap.
minutes.
Break
Yeah,
time.
that sounds really good right now.
All right, guys.
We'll be back to wrap things up. You talk about monks for a while.
And don't forget we have questions, so don't talk too much.
Yeah.
Look,
Yeah. Setting a
we
timer,
all
you
have
have
to
20
fit in
minutes.
why we're actually playing the class we're currently playing, aside from, oh god, we were told to do it. So
Well, I mean,
That's one of our
String-
questions. You gotta wait for
exactly. No,
Yes.
no, it's a good
Okay, Miss,
question.
go ahead and take a
but we're
half
just
an hour
gonna
to
do
explain
it.
yourself.
Anyways, so basically, what happened was going into Mr. Pandaria, they introduced this weird little class called Monk, and they were like, this class can totally DPS and heal and do all kinds of really fun things. And I was like, bullshit, that's not true. So I started playing one in beta, and realized that for whatever reason, they decided to make the class really, 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 really powerful. And at the time, Storm, I was also a Resto Shaman, I heal with Storm. And he was going on about how Shaman was going to be really overpowered in Mist, and I said, bullshit, I don't care, I'm going to play Monk. And then lo and behold, they released the game, and Monk was absolutely ridiculous, as we all know. So, I was not expecting to actually enjoy the class as much as I did. I was actually fully expecting to hate it and quit WoW because I made a terrible, terrible mistake. But, lo and behold, the class is actually really fun, and I could probably talk about what they've dropped the ball on for hours, but we're not going to do that today. So,
Start your own podcast for that.
yeah, I'll
Yeah.
probably have to start my own podcast for that, and I probably won't ever do that. So,
Monk podcast, 5 hours a
Monk-
day of just talking about Monk.
Just
5 hours a day
He'd
of
do
me
it.
just complaining.
He would do it. I have
He
to listen to this
would.
every day.
Yeah, he would do it. Yeah.
But I find it interesting that all of us have very different reasons for why we play our current class, and I find that always fun for the entire community as a whole, because there's always some really interesting stories tacked onto that.
Well,
So if anyone else feels like sharing a story,
I'll share.
I'm gonna... Wait, what?
Shut up now.
Yes, I will shut up now, because everyone gets
My
so
God.
easily.
You still haven't shut up.
No, I'll tell my story. I went from I started healing mostly a lot during last expansion. What was it? Cataclysm. Between Lich King and Cataclysm, I was a holy paladin mostly, because we needed a pretty strong tank healer, and shamans weren't. They were okay as tank healers, but they weren't the best tank healer. It was still a paladin or a disc priest at the time until we got shaman mastery. But my shaman was like 35 when we went into Cataclysm. And after a while, as my guild was running Dragon Soul, I was just getting really bored of doing the same heals every 10 seconds on a paladin like Holy Flash, Holy Light, Word of Glory, and done, pretty much. So it got to the point where I was like, I'm going to go to Shaman because I can do a little bit of both. I can be the tank healer, and I can help our Druid healer, who was our raid healer, out with a lot of the stacking phases with Healing Rain. And I went to Shaman, and I've been a Shaman ever since. Even though I tried at the beginning of Mist to quest as Resto, and that just kind of took its toll on me, and I will never do that again. So, I think the only healer I can actually quest on in a healing spec would be Disc.
It's okay.
You could actually do it as
Holy's
Holy.
that way too now, right now.
Yeah,
Holy's
Red Star
really
does.
good
Well, my
right now,
Paladin's
yeah.
still 85. I haven't really touched him yet.
Anyone else have an interesting, fun story?
Okay, I have a story. I don't know if Frozen wants to tell it or not, because it was whenever I actually joined Ascent.
No, you can
As
tell
an,
it. I wasn't really
as an
there for it.
undergeared Resto Druid, or an undergeared Disc Priest, and Frozen was my co-healer. And whenever I came in, I was thrown into Heroic Ryo progression, and bare minimum 359 gear. So Frozen, being the genius he is, I don't remember what you did. You unequipped your weapon or somehow, and were still
So
out
it's-
healing me.
Yes, I was trying to run away from a wipe, basically unequip my gear because I saw someone doing something stupid. I got in combat before I could swap the gear set, so I ended up only taking off the weapon and not realizing it.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah. So I spent like probably a good hour of attempts without a weapon on. We're still out healing Echo though, but
I mean, I can.
Resto Druids and T12 OP.
Oh yeah, I can tell a story about how Disc Priests are pretty OP currently. As I was leveling my mage.
I thought everyone knew this.
Oh yeah, but as I was leveling my mage over on Morin's realm, so I could help that guild raid with a DPS. I'm like 86 in Stormstout Brewery, and the tank was just going way too slow, so I started mage tanking and holding aggro better than the actual tank was, and didn't really drop any health at all with Joe in there with me. So it was quite an interesting run.
Pretty sure I was running around in that gnome pirate hat at the time.
Probably, so you didn't even
As
have your
well.
full set. Yeah, it's definitely the bottom of the healing totem there.
Yeah.
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 I mean,
let's
Give me
just talk
thoughts.
about how underpowered Disc is.
Yeah.
Oh my
You
god.
get into a raid with 2 holy
Rapture
paladins and 2
and,
disc
like-
priests, you can just
oh
put
my
someone on
God.
follow and walk away.
Oh my god.
I mean, I do that all the time. If I get like 2 or more disc priests and LFR, I'll put someone on follow and literally leave my computer for the entire run.
You're bad.
I feel
Yeah, I post my tracker on
I
my
feel like
phone.
Storm has good stories about when
Well, we
I
do have a
found my way
question.
to my realm.
We do have a question in the
Oh.
chat.
I see.
I'm
There's
gonna
been a
pronounce
few.
your name wrong, I'm sorry, but Drager Unlimited? He wants to know ancestral guidance or healing tide totem for arenas, and somebody said conductivity. So, shamans out there, what do you guys think?
I don't arena, so if I had to guess Healing Tide.
Yeah. I mean, the
I
only
have
the only
actually
reason I
PvP
wouldn't go
describes
with
it.
Healing
I feel
Tide.
like it could get killed too
Yeah,
easily.
That's the only
You
reason I
just-
wouldn't do Healing Tide.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
But-
conductivity, if you can keep it on the ground, it does something. I don't actually know
It
what the thing is.
stuns.
Yeah.
Yeah,
As,
I mean,
as,
aside
actually
from
pretty
it
nice.
stumped, like
As a
Healing Tide
bit
just
a- as a bit of a reminder, we're constantly looking for people to come on and talk about some of these things because while we are good players, we don't know everything about everything. So,
I'm a
PvP.
dragon slayer.
yeah.
And we would
I think
also,
we have one legitimate PvPer here. So,
and she PvPs on a Resto Druid, so...
yeah, so we don't really know much.
The extent of my PvP is leveling my druid
But
in Battlegrounds as Resto.
I'm-
You know what? I'll
Ages
find an
ago.
arena team, and I'll go in just to answer that question, so...
that might be a fun venture. We could
Awesome.
always do that together. That'd be fun.
That's frightening.
That would be fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
By
it'll be...
fun, I mean you would all hate me within the hour.
probably.
Don't already.
Yeah.
You
and
assume
we're
we
also-
like you now.
We're also probably going to be looking for tanks, and I think maybe 1 or 2 DPS for guests, just to see their views on some of the where healers stack up right now. Because I know there's been a couple of tanks on the forum who will jump into a healer forum or a healer topic, just like, you healers are OP, and the whole thing is, well, we're keeping you alive, right? Do you want us to be able to keep you alive?
Working as
Yes.
intended.
But
Yeah.
definitely, as a note, we will be having guests on the show, possible well-known figures within the community. I've spoken with people like Maticus, and I've talked to a couple people maybe in Vodka that might be interested, but I don't know how well-known they are within Vodka yet, because I'm still doing my research. And we have plenty of other friends that people may or may not know that we will be able to invite on and talk. And okay, you have no friend. I, on the other hand, have many. Okay.
Our friends are just the people in this podcast right
This
now. That's the
icon.
extent of how many
That's
friends
more
we
or less
have.
true.
I don't know any of you.
That
I don't know
is
what you're
true.
talking about.
But
I'm gonna cry,
to
like, in a
Oh.
corner.
You should
Okay.
bring
Don't
Tony
do that,
on,
please.
Joe.
Oh, no, because then I'll spend the hour and a half yelling at him, and everybody will think I'm, like, the most awful
So do we want to...
word I'm not going to
do
say
we want to
right
get
now.
into these questions, and then we'll take more questions from the chat and just Chat, tell more stories.
Uh,
Yeah,
Sure.
Miss, did you
Sounds good.
wanted to be the one to
Yeah, I
read
can do
over
it.
them?
I have them up, so
Everyone wants to.
I'll do it. So our first question is, we got a couple of questions from email. First one is from Zoevil. I'm probably going to pronounce like most of these names wrong. So he/she/they asked, say, during Kata, I was having a blast on my Disc Priest playing with a Haste Crit spec. The expansion pack brought us Spirit Shield, which is pretty damn nice and matches quite well with our Mastery. Consequently, Mastery has been my build this expansion. I think that's true for most Disc Priests, wouldn't you say, Joe?
No, but I think Matt
I think
wants
it's
to
true for
answer
most
this
Disc Priests.
question.
I don't know
For
that.
most.
Not most,
Yeah.
not all, most. It's not done, actually. Now, the current rendition of the 5.2 patch notes is showing Spirit Shield will no longer be directly affected by Mastery. I understand the existing expectation is for Spirit Shield to benefit from Mastery indirectly, and that the nerf should be reasonable. My question is this. With the changes to the interaction between Mastery and Spirit Shield, will my beloved Haste Crit build be viable again, or is Mastery going to continue to be the only build worth mentioning for Disc? Please discuss.
All
I
right.
think Frozen
Frozen
wants to
and
take
Joe.
this one.
I
But-
sort of wanted to touch on this.
Yeah.
I think it's misleading to say that Haste Crit isn't currently viable because, well, I actually don't run with the Mastery build. I think in a 10-man, actually, you're not doing as much if you're if you're geared for Mastery. Because in a 10-man, you can already usually cap out Spirit Shell even without Mastery because it caps at 60% of the Priest max HP. Mastery is already only a decent stat. Well, I shouldn't say decent, but it's only the best throughput stat if something like 60% of
60%.
your healing done is from absorbs. And if you're capping Spirit Shell, then Spirit Shell won't benefit from your Mastery either. So Haste and Crit will help you with Atonement healing, which I don't think is as valued by a lot of Disc Priests as it really should be.
I agree.
There are a lot of tight enrage timers, and doing as much DPS as you can, even as a healer, is very useful.
I actually, I mean, at 88 right now, just seeing Haste and Crit is really nice, especially with Atonement healing. Because Divine Aegeus comes off of critical heals, right?
It does, and is automatically applied via a Prayer of Healing. But other than that, yeah, crits.
Right.
And like Frozen, I also have better throughput with a haste. I've actually tried various things, and of all of them, favoring Mastery impeded my healing the most. So while that does work for, obviously, the vast majority of Disc Priest Haste Crit, at least in a 10-man, I can't speak for 25s, but at least in 10-man, it is more than good. So if you really want to run Haste Crit now, there's absolutely no reason you shouldn't be.
I guess back to the heart of the question, though. In general, Mastery will lose a lot of its value during in the next patch. It won't be like you'll need a far more significant amount of your heals to be coming from absorbs. I mean, it will still indirectly benefit from it, but its scaling with Mastery will go down a bit. But in general, Haste and Crit will be better stats for throughput.
I'm gonna jump in on this too, having played the Disc Priest for 2 rating tiers. Mastery is a great stat. It's gonna lose some value from the spiritual nerfs, and I think we would naturally transition more towards the Haste Crit build anyways, because of how gear inflation is gonna work and how much mana we're gonna have to play with, like always in later rating tiers. Because I know pretty much, like myself in Dragon's Hole, I was soft haste cap on my flash hill. Like, that's how much haste I had, even without the Seal of the Seven Signs. So faster healing's always gonna come into play, like stacking haste. Once we have more mana to play with, and it's less mana negative.
I mean, we do need to keep in mind that we are still unclear on what Blizzard is planning to do with spirit scaling, and with spirit being our primary source of
Everything.
regen. Yeah. The only way we'll be able to cut back and scale higher on other stats is if, say, we just get ridiculous amounts of int on our gear, and it doesn't matter how much mana you have. Like, it's going to be interesting. Blizzard's new system is something I've been watching very closely, and everything about the future of healing rides entirely on how they feel it's working out, and how it does end up working out in the future. So,
On that note, I think they honestly are still playing with the idea of what they want Spirit to be, just because of how new the concept of cap mana pool is, and it's scaling purely
And also,
off of
we're
Spirit.
only one patch into the expansion. It is only been out for what, like 4 or 5 months?
It's September 25th was launched.
Right.
So,
So
yeah.
it's only been out for maybe going on 5 months, I think, or
Right.
something like that. So it's still, by expansion standards, it is still very early on in the expansion to say anything is definite. And we also have to remember, this is Blizzard, so once we get used to something, they're going to completely change it anyway. So we always have to stay on our toes about this.
yeah,
That's true.
indeed. So, are we going to now move on to a new question?
Yeah, let's move
Or-
on.
Yeah, let's do the next
Because
question.
this one is my favorite. I'm pretty sure we all have
Go ahead.
a lot to say on it.
It's not going to be the one about why do we keep holy priests alive, is it?
No. I mean,
You're
that's a
saying
good question.
Everyone's favorite questions. Are you talking about the monk one?
No. No. Okay.
Think
Somebody,
about this
guys.
somebody asked, when evaluating a healer application via logs, what do you look for? I find that an interesting question because I don't tend to look for the things most people will look at. You know, when you think order logs, you're going to look at the log and then you're going to see, okay, does this guy have like top healing, or does he do what the average top 50 players of his class do? And a lot of people look at that and take that at face value and say, hey, that guy sucks, or hey, that guy's really good. But I've had times where I've looked at applications and I've seen someone doing ridiculous amounts of HPS, and something wouldn't add up because it would be like a normal fight. Like, it would be normal Mortalk and they'd be doing a fucking million healing or something, and that doesn't make sense. So what I'll tend to end up doing is I'll look at other factors. I'll look at, you know, how much damage a raid is taking. You know, how many times did someone die? How much healing is the other healer doing in comparison to what they should be doing at their gear level, at their, you know, progression level, etc. I am not a fan of World of Logs, personally, when it comes to healing, because a lot of people take entirely too much stock in the wrong things.
But also-
it's an excellent tool,
It is.
but
a great tool
it's
if
very
you know what to look
easy
for.
to misinterpret.
And
And,
you also-
looking
It
for
is.
the top healing is not going to be what you need to be looking for.
And you also have to remember, even in any raid, in any expansion, from vanilla all the way up to now, there are some fights that favor certain healers over others.
Yeah.
So you can have one fight where, say, Mist is top healing them, but then you can have another fight where Storm is, and then, you know, so on and so forth. Shut up, Mist.
What?
He wasn't going to say anything.
I wasn't going to
It's
say
fine.
anything because Storm beats me more than usual. So, anyways,
I mean,
Yeah,
healing
the
meters
thing-
are so subjective, just because, I mean, there's so many things to take into account. There's damage patterns, there's spread healing versus stacked healing, there's
How well your tanks
Like-
are mitigating, how well...
there's obviously going to be an HPS cap on a fight.
Yeah.
I mean,
but,
there's
Well-
a point where your healers shouldn't be pushing more healing than they have to.
Yeah.
And if they are, it's your raid screwing up and not your healers.
I think Storm had something to say about this too.
Parses are something that a lot of people really get hung up over when they don't look at them the right way. They just look at the numbers and don't consider all those other factors. There may be a healer who's doing less overall HPS, but when something critical happened in the fight, they did something that saved the raid. That means more than the actual HPS you're pulling. A lot of people forget that. And specifically with apps, I try to not look too heavily into logs because logs are something that are very subjective. It depends heavily on your raid group, your raid comp, and the individual skill of the players you're playing with. And it's not something that's... It gives you a picture of the person, but it's not the whole picture. And honestly, the best way to evaluate a healer is just healing with them and seeing how they heal.
Definitely agree on that.
And
I guess to answer the question more directly too, things that I look for are not just the healing per second, of course, but things like uptime, spell selection, because a lot of times people aren't even using the right abilities at the right times or for the right fights. They might be healing inefficiently. What else?
Cooldown usage.
Mana.
Yeah.
Cooldown usage, mana gains.
That's what I look at. Uptimes, cooldown usage.
One of the big things that I personally would look at whenever I'd go through healing logs, whenever I was the Sense Healing Officer, was I would compare the damage patterns to their burst healing. Because that's really big, part of it. It's not necessarily your HPS that matters. It's whenever you have it, whenever it counts.
Exactly.
And I believe Fluffy mentioned this in chat that a lot of guilds do require healing logs to be presented with the app, and people need to know that, assuming you're applying to a competent guild, a guild that knows what to look for, a guild that's respectable,
Or at least has officers that know what to look for and everything.
right? You aren't necessarily looking to put on a show for them. You're looking to do your job.
Right.
I remember when I applied to Simple Math, I was super concerned about my numbers because I was not in the best guild. And, I felt like I could be doing better, but my guild was screwing the whole thing. And sometimes we'll get applications for a healer and they'll link us photos from an LFR run. And as much as I'm like, oh, look, you did 80,000 HPS, but that doesn't tell me anything because there's no damage. No.
Oh, LFR logs.
So it's
LFR logs make me laugh.
It's a very tricky system, and for the most part, unless you know specifically what you're looking for, you should take them with a grain of salt and make sure that when you're applying to a guild and you need to provide logs, make sure that the logs you provide show that you're doing your job, that you are healing what needs to be healed. You're not padding too much just to make it look better, because it's very easy to tell when someone's padding.
Oh, yes.
So, I mean...
The only thing better than LFR logs is Shot of Anger logs.
Oh, God.
I don't think I've ever seen that.
I
seen
have.
Sure, we'll get to
So,
it.
let's ask another question that's come in, and then we'll do another one from chat. So this one's actually from Reddit. I have a question for the podcast. My guild is pretty casual, but we are trying to ramp up progression in order to finish this tier before 5.2 comes along. Good luck. And lately I've noticed that our druid healer is going very quickly and is doing 60 to 70% overhealing in some fights. Now we are stuck on Elegon and she is going before the first phase is even over. As a holy priest, I see those overheal numbers and think something is wrong, but when I ask her about it, she just said druids overheal. Is this true? Are there any tips I can give her that might help us get through this fight? Thanks. So Joe, you and I actually have personal experiences with this.
Yeah. So, without saying, now that we've just said that logs aren't the be-all, end-all, I'm going to give a caveat that in this case, logs would actually be useful to see where the overheal was coming from. But just based on, the high percentage of overhealing and the it looks to me like they're probably rejuve blanketing, and that's not really necessary because the damage is in predictable patterns. You know when it's coming, and you can have your rejuves up then, but there is no reason to keep the raid blanketed. In the past, it was true that druids had an obscene amount of overhealing, yet even then, 70% would be,
A lot.
a bit concerning to me. But that said, high overheal was acceptable because of the way mana used to work.
But even
And
then, I don't think it was any, like 60 to
No,
70%
No,
overhealing.
no, that's
40,
what I'm-
40 maybe.
yeah. Well, that's what I'm saying. Even then, with unlimited mana, 70 would be like, what the hell are you doing?
Yeah. I mean,
But-
it's very important to consider that there's a factor in that statement that makes the whole thing worth talking about, and it's the booming part.
Exactly.
because
That's why I'm saying rejuve.
a lot of
getting-
people look at overhealing as a bad thing.
It's not.
And sometimes
No.
it is a bad thing when you're going when you're losing
Well,
mana,
yes,
when
of
you're
course.
wiping the raid because you're not keeping up your mana bar. But as someone who plays a monk, I got a lot of grief early on in the expansion because, I
I
was
did.
topping the healing and I would do like 90% overhealing, but I wasn't ooming. Everyone
Right.
was staying alive. Everything was fine. But that's just because how monks work. But
I-
other classes can also, overheal and do a lot of overhealing because there might not be a whole lot of damage going out. However, that all has to do with how well you're managing your resources.
right.
I mean,
I
I mean, the
have-
thing about overhealing is that if you're not ooming and people aren't dying, then it doesn't really matter. It only really matters in those two situations.
Right.
also, I think one thing a lot of healers do is use your mana regenerating abilities, so innervate for druid often, or use them early and use them often.
Yes, use them at any time that using it isn't going to, any of it's going to be wasted. If
Right.
it's 20% return, you do it at 80, and then after that, do it on cooldown. As long as you're not going to, in theory, regen more than you have available to regen, that's when you use it the first time, and then after that, you can use it on cooldown.
And it's also really nice to use them in lower damage phases so that you're not just healing through the mana you're regaining.
Right.
Yeah.
So if you're going
But-
into a high burst phase and you're going to be, using 40% of your mana, but you're only going to gain back 20, you're really only cutting what you're using in half.
But
Right.
as someone, like, if I was trying to advise this healer as to what they can do better, they can definitely make better use of their innervates, but it would be advised that they look at the fight, and they look at where the damage is coming out, and they look at the spells that they're casting at the time. Like, am I blanketing the whole raid and rejuves and mashing all these buttons when there's literally no damage going out? That's a problem.
Yeah.
They can stop doing that. They could go to a more low low profile form of healing, like nourish or whatever is the current official.
Why did you
protocol.
even say
Don't
nourish?
say
You're
nourish.
lying.
I'm a
Get
master.
out of here.
Shut up,
Growth.
no,
Holy
no.
crap.
Do it.
Don't wild growth, Swiftmint, and
Okay.
use
Swiftman
regen.
and Wild Growth are your go-tos
Yeah.
for
know
efficiency.
what I'm talking about.
And
Anyway,
use rejuve on and annihilate.
Nourish isn't even on my bar or keybound for
Really?
my voodoo.
Nourish
So,
is bad.
I still
Mist
have
It's like
is
heal
never
Fruitus
left
Priest.
I have,
Oh God.
I still have fond memories of Nourish from Nax and Wrath.
Oh, Nourish was good then.
Times.
Nourish.
So I just like to. I don't like to
No
discount it
Nourish.
because it's like an old friend to me,
Not right now, baby.
right? But yeah, so it's very important that you sit down with that healer and you look over the damage, you look over what you're casting at the time, you fix what doesn't need to be there.
I think a lot of it's that their druid is stuck in the past and can't adapt to this new expansion. If they're not willing to change, like, I hate to say it, but replacing them might actually be the way to go.
I actually agree. Having dealt with a similar situation
didn't use any
Yes, so did
cooldown.
I.
very
Oh, man.
recently, and having, after sitting down with this person on multiple occasions and trying to discuss what could be done differently, what could be done better, and being told, this is a game and you can't tell me how to play. Yeah, not good.
If they're not going to be a team player, there's no reason for them to be there.
Exactly.
Like, if you're in any form of raiding guild, you have to be willing to adapt to your guild and try to min-max as much as possible to your progression level.
Well, I would have been okay with not even maxing, but when you have a 60% uptime on Life Bloom,
You don't understand how
Not good.
this druid never this druid never once used Incarnation for Tree of Life in 19 wipes of Elegon?
yeah, he used Tranquility once.
Oh god.
Well,
Life Bloom had a 63% uptime.
Okay, so Joe was doing like 80-ish heals per second through mostly Atonement, and he's doing like 28 to 32. So, I mean, I know heals per second isn't always the one thing you want to look at, but when there's that big of a gap, there's something there.
Yeah.
I think I just cut this question here. We can move on to it because it's also something that I might end up talking about way too much. But the question is, what do you think of the how few healers can we run with trend and the general abundance of content that is not healer inclusive? Emphasis on soloing, scenarios, brawler skill, de-emphasis on 5-mans.
Well,
This is something that is very controversial to a lot of higher end players who maintain tight rosters. So you see, the problem with it is Blizzard is not consistent.
Blizzard consistent? Yeah.
And when I say that they're not consistent, I mean
They're not
in this tier alone, we've had a fight like Heroic Garajal, where you 3-heal it. And then you turn around...
You healed Spirit Kings.
Spirit Kings did. We 3-healed that. But you had these situations. And then you have a fight like Empress, who is an 8-healer fight. We don't have 8 healers in our guild. So we've had to force DPS to off-spec heal, things like that. I feel like under-healing content is something you tend to only see at the cutting-edge level. However, I don't feel like it's an okay game design choice. If you're going to do that, you should look at, okay, well, how many guilds, like, what is the average number of healers a 25-man guild has? What is the average number of healers a 10-man guild has? It's like 3, right? And you should look to balance your content around that fact. Because when you have a fight where you're sitting all of your healers and then you're having a fight where you have to make your DPS heal, it's going to definitely cause issues. You will lose players, you will lose guildies, you're going to have people that get pissed off, you might have... You'll have very bad situations.
to go DPS.
It's
and then,
not
of course,
as bad in 10-man,
right.
of course.
It's more of an
but-
issue for 25-man raids.
Like, the thing about it is that you're not going to be able to stop high-end 25-man guilds from running less healers because at this level of play, the DPS really matters, and the average skill of the player is high enough that they can avoid damage more than lesser skill players.
We hope.
So in those situations where there's less damage going out, you don't need as many healers. And there's not really much you can do about that other than putting in a fight where you need a minimum number of healers like Empress, where you have to have these healers to heal through the damage.
Right.
But I mean,
And it's not really a problem.
And even
with
then, the
Vex.
top guilds are going to have the best, or at least better healers who are equipped to underheal it anyway. But
I mean, and then you get, if you want to go into 5-mans and scenarios too, you have some healing classes, namely Mistweavers and Disc Priests, that can do both a decent
Holy
DPS, a decent amount of DPS, and heal. So, I mean, I know a few guilds on my server that are trying to go for the fastest times for the challenge modes. They're running with either a Mistweaver or a Disc Priest just because it helps with DPS requirements and everything as well.
You can come at this question from a different standpoint, though, as well. You can come at it from the standpoint of Blizzard is over-tuning DPS checks.
Yeah.
And that's what's causing the major
That's
issues.
true as well.
Which, I mean, is something they've historically done. Because the problem lays in the fact that the top tier of raiders will consume content at a ridiculous pace no matter what Blizzard does. And the best way for them to do that is to make the DPS checks so ridiculously high that you have to do this like artificial difficulty thing where the mechanics don't matter. When you're in a guild like that, the mechanics just aren't going to matter because you will learn those quick, and then you just need to DPS. So you add a high DPS check, and then that might gate them. You know, you'll have at the beginning of this tier, people saying Garagel was absolutely impossible,
absolutely
and
brutal gate. Like,
and then you'll have top guilds that are like, no, it's completely possible. Shut up. And it's a very awkward situation that there's no real solution for. Now, sometimes I'll see, normal mode guilds or, casual players seeing what we do, and they'll say, hey, well, maybe we should 3-heal this fight too, and I don't really think that they should take what the top-tier raiders do and apply that to a casual setting, because it might not work out well for them.
Later on, when they're more geared, it probably will, but until that point,
And this goes back again to, this goes back again to, is it's still early in an expansion.
Exactly.
So, Blizzard is still fine-tuning, but like I said earlier, again, once we get used to it, they're going to change it. So, Milk, any more questions from the chat? Because I can't keep up with that.
Oh, there were a few. Just give me a second. Did we already do the one that says, do you tend to use cooldowns aggressively or early? Or do you tend to reserve them for crap moments?
We touched on it, but I think it depends on the cooldown. To be class. And the class.
Yeah, in the class cooldown.
It depends on damage patterns. It depends on cooldown.
As a shaman, I don't really use Ascendance or Healing Tide Totem until I have to deal with high raid-wide burst damage.
When it comes to my Mindbender, I use it as often as I possibly can.
Mana regen?
Yes.
Mana regen cooldowns I use early, and then I use them on cooldown, so...
Yeah.
As for raid cooldowns, a lot of times you'll have a set rotation for it, especially since raid damage is so predictable in this tier.
Oh, yes.
Serious?
A lot of times you'll just assign, well, we're going to trank when the boss does this ability, and so you don't really have any question as to if you should use it early. The only time that it may come into question is if you absolutely need to use it to survive, and then you'll change your rotation of healing cooldowns to suit that.
A lot of times guilds will either hold a cooldown for that, or just change their rotation on the fly too. And most guilds have so many cooldowns that they have abundance of them. It depends on your comp, really, though.
And then, at the end of the day, the only cooldowns that really matter are just priests and paladins. Can't count how many times in the past I've been set for a paladin.
If only you had a hand of protection.
Right.
This is why I run a really small guild that has only 1 or 2 healers, like I did last time.
See, my guild has plenty of healers. They're just all played by the same people. So
I should be back on Dalaran.
It's not the healer. It's not the how many healers we have. That's the issue. It's the how many people we have playing the healers.
If I could heal with myself, that would work. I need some multi-bots.
That would be interesting.
Lauren talking about playing with herself.
Oh my god.
Alright, so...
Well, let's not get sidetracked.
So Spokes in the chat wants us to touch base on...
Well then.
Spokes in the chat wants us to touch base on... What we think about druids coming up in the 5.2 PTR. Has anyone here played the PTR yet?
I just downloaded it today.
I have not.
I haven't downloaded. I haven't made a druid over there yet, so...
Well, I'm supposed to be looking at it in about 10 minutes, actually. I think I'm going to stick around here for a while. I told them that I'm doing this, so it can wait, I guess.
I'm currently looking... she wants us to talk about mushrooms, but I can't find them in the PTR patch notes.
The thing about mushrooms...
It should be on MMO.
Yeah.
MMO says that each mushroom's going to
based on overheals,
absorb 25% of your overhealing done by rejuvenation, and it will cap at each mushroom will cap at 1/3 of the druid's max HP. On the PTR, I believe they're currently not capped at all. So it's buggy there. I need to play around with it to see for sure. I think it'll help a little bit. I don't know that I think it's the end-all be-all
So
solution.
again, you have 70% overheals. Hey.
I don't
Yeah,
know how I feel about that.
Fix.
I really don't know how I feel about that because it's just encouraging a player.
Just blanketing.
Yeah,
It's encouraging something that isn't good.
It's encouraging bad play, basically. And
Exactly.
we don't want people to fall back
But
in.
it's encouraging it for a very generous reward. Because the Wild Mushrooms Bloom will be one of the stronger raid cooldowns. Like, it'll have to be used that way.
Yeah.
It'll be used as a raid cooldown, not as a general, like,
Healing.
well, yeah.
I just don't like it. I mean,
It'll be like how Spirit
I
Shield
mean,
is now.
I'll have to kind of play around. I got to see in the PTR, but
Yeah, we'll have to.
I'm skeptical about it. We'll probably touch on that more on a different episode.
Next week, probably, or the week after.
Yeah, once we get some chance, once some of us gets a chance to play in the PTR and play around with the different. Actually, Rejuvenation is going to cost approximately 9% less mana if I did my math correctly. So
Yeah.
It's going to cost less, but
I need to dig out my druid.
pre-hotting the whole raid died, and it needs to stay dead because
Yes.
it's not
I just
good
think
play.
well,
I'm gonna roll
they said
this.
that they wanted to move away from that playstyle in the first place. So I
Yeah,
don't know
exactly.
what
Just encourage it. Which you find Blizzard does that all the time. They say, we don't want this, and then they do it. Like, they make you do it. They pigeonhole you into
yeah,
it.
don't take anything Blizzard says to heart because chances are they're going to change it anyway. So
Treat them like healing logs.
Yep, exactly. Great result. I'm going to roll back to this question that Mr. Fail asked. Exactly how is removing DPS checks going to lead to the exodus of short healing? I don't think any of us said they would remove DPS checks. They can't. It's something they have to
It's
do.
just
Game would be too easy.
It's more that there's no legitimate way to remove this short healing trend because it will happen no matter what.
exactly.
The only way they can do it is if they make more fights like Empress, where you literally have no choice but to bring more healers. And when you start getting to that point where you're constantly requiring 25 mangoes to have 6-7 healers, fights might get boring at some point because you can't make them without DPS checks. Empress isn't it's a 15-minute fight. It's not, a huge DPS check.
it's not.
It's a mechanic check. And Blizzard still wants DPS checks in the game. What they could do about it is they could balance it. They could have, they can be more consistent. You'll have one tier that'll have maybe 5 DPS checks and 5, healing fights. Something simple like that. But there will be no actual way to completely remove the short healing trend. It's something that has been going on since Burning Crusade. Or sooner. I don't know. Burning Crusade is probably because whenever 25-man became a thing, that's whenever we started testing.
Which
around
was
with
in
running.
Burning Crusade. I mean, in vanilla, your raids were 40 men and were just insane. There wasn't really too many mechanics that you really had to look out for to an extent. I mean, you had a handful of them, but you could still, mess with some. It was, it was.
Whenever they switched the raid sizes, where we were like, okay, well, how few people can we bring to kill this class? Like,
Right.
how many
Basically-
of this class can we have, or blah blah blah.
At this point, if a boss can be underhealed,
It will.
people will try to underheal
It will be.
And even if
Yeah.
it can't be underhealed, we'll still try.
Still
Yep.
at least
It's-
try.
Yeah, it's.
I mean, it essentially boils down to you're never going to be able to deal with a lack of gear going into a raid tier.
exactly.
And that's going to set what the DPS check is, and that's gradually going to get easier as we get gear.
For
Exactly.
an insight in the mentality going into it is when guilds like Blood Legion and Vodka and guilds like that, when they start raiding, this is literally the first week that the tier is available, which means they have crafted epics, they have no LFR items, they have blues. So they have to go with what's available. So they'll hit a boss and they'll be like, okay, well, we can't kill those because we keep hitting in range. Time to start cutting healers.
Yep.
And then they'll cut healers until they can meet the DPS check. And it's just always like that for me, and for guilds like that. So it's not a huge problem, but if Blizzard can be more consistent in designing fights so that you don't have such extremes within a raid tier, I think it'll be less of an issue. Now, for other parts of the game, like Brawler's Guild or scenarios, that's a completely different monster that I'm not going to touch in this.
We'll talk
this
about
particular
scenarios
episode.
and Brawlers Guilds in a different episode.
Yeah.
I mean, you can touch on them shortly.
No.
I mean,
I'm good. Don't worry, because I might rant way too long on that.
That's going to
well,
be a
I
one
mean,
missed
well,
is,
then you can
5-hour
talk.
personal podcasts.
We can mute him
Coming in
and
the
have
near
a
future.
quick discussion.
I will say one thing about scenarios. You can do them as a healer. Just saying.
Scenarios are fine as a healer.
It's actually kind of fun.
I do them always at a healer, and I've never had anybody say, "Oh my God, you're slowing this scenario down."
Most often I get people like, oh my god, finally a healer.
Exactly.
No, usually people are dying.
Now,
Never an issue.
another thing someone asked was if we thought that druids were going to make a comeback in 5.2 due to the fact that no one wants a druid, which, in my experience, I have not hit a situation where I don't want a druid.
I want a druid.
I mean,
Somebody
where
give me a druid.
druids are so
still
viable.
great healers.
The thing I was talking about earlier today, and I think anyone can agree, is Blizzard designed fights this expansion in a way that there is no healer that you would not actually really want to bring. Because every class up until and beyond Heroic Shot Fear can do well. Every class can heal it, every class can, not suck.
Speaking of Heroic Shot here, have you guys downed him yet?
We
No.
just started work on it this week.
Actually, I named
Speaking of Heroic Shaw,
as
if I remember correctly, did
Method?
Method take like 2 or 3 Resto Druids to
They
their
did.
kill?
Probably. I did not look at their
Two.
note. But yeah.
They had Priest of some sort, Mistweaver, and 2 Resto Druids.
It was probably a Disc Priest with
Yeah.
how much Blizzard overbuffed them.
I mean,
Probably.
it's just one of those things where if the player playing the class is good, which I know a lot of people like to say Blizzard doesn't follow bring the player, not the class, and it feels like that some ways, but for the most part, bring the player, not the class always applies in this day and age.
It's pretty true.
It always
aside from
applies.
Disc Priests.
Yeah. So,
Unless you're a
Just
disc
saying.
priest, it's a
unless you're a
proper
disc
term right
priest,
there.
that's just
And then
so,
you
yeah.
just-
No one wants to heal.
Well, we have
Spiritual
somebody in
and
the
attendant
chat
healing.
that's, starting a bidding for a druid. Does anybody have 10k gold to start the bid?
I'll give you
I-
1 copper.
Poor
No,
Raider.
my eternal
I'm already a
love
druid.
is worth more than that. So, somebody.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm
yeah,
druid.
you really, a lot of times you do have to bring the player, not the class, because I've seen people play Disc Priest horribly
Oh,
to the
God.
extent that it makes me want to shoot somebody. And then I've
Yeah.
seen people play Resto Druid so brilliantly that you just want to sit there and worship them to an extent.
Yeah, see, I have a good story about this. I'm not naming names.
Alright, guys, mute your mics, get something to eat.
No, it's not that long, but see, once upon a time, this guild was working on heroic protectors, and they have dying from damage often. And one of their raiders got a tell from one of his friends that stated, "Hey, why isn't your disc priest using Spirit Shell?" And yeah,
Is this Heroic Protectors or
yes, heroic
Okay.
protectors.
Ooh.
And that particular raider was like, "Hey, I don't know why our disc priest isn't using Spirit Shell. That might explain why we're dying." But then the disc priest started using Spirit Shell and the boss died. So yeah. So sometimes disc priests can be bad if they don't use Spirit Shell.
They can be very bad. I've seen some.
One word. LFR.
It personally
We could,
offends me. Bad
One whole.
bad healers
One
in
LFR.
general.
we could
Yeah.
spend an entire episode on LFR, honestly, Mel.
Right?
I could
Very
spend
users.
a whole. Maybe I need my own show to talk about bad disc.
Let's just make an entirely different podcast called Why We Hate LFR as Healers. That would be
Overhealing isn't necessarily bad though.
Right?
the only time I've never gotten a bad LFR is if I run it on a Tuesday. Or a Tuesday or Wednesday.
I've run it only on
If
Tuesdays.
you want a
so-
challenge, run it on Monday. Come on.
Serious.
Oh God.
Monday night LFR.
The
Monday
last
night.
time I ran,
Before the set.
the last time I ran a Monday night LFR on my shaman, I actually got to the point where
I needed a
I was
drink.
almost solo healing half of Fang, because that's how bad the other healers were.
Yeah.
Yeah, sounds about right.
For me,
It's a
it
different
was
thing if you do it as a
30% on Sulong. No, it was.
It wasn't even 30% healing. It was closer to 45-50% of the healing done.
I was doing like over 90k HPS, and the next person was 50, and I was like, oh my
Yeah, and you're
god.
sitting
That
there-
was,
Yeah,
And then
Sulong's
people,
always like
and then
that.
people start dying, and they're like, "What the fuck, healers?" And you're just like, "Have you, if there's one
So-
person healing everybody, and you're standing in the middle of, the group with Arcane Resonance, you're gonna die."
Yeah.
it's like, oh my god, get your thumb out of your nose and spam AoE heals. Just go.
I know Vera passed over this earlier, or we all did, but there was another question that is actually posted to our website about Mistweavers that we said we'd answer.
Yeah.
It's
I'll be
in
back
it's
in a few
in
minutes.
it's in the post, so we have to answer it. It's
With the introduction
Right.
of the monk class, and specifically the Mistweaver spec, blah 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 blah, and endgame rating, how well do you feel Mistweavers have performed in raid groups thus far? And more importantly, since they are such a new class, what directional changes do you think we'll see or would like to see as Blizzard continues to tweak their newest healer's playstyle going forward? I think that's pretty much the entire question. So, Miss,
Yeah.
I think you're really the only one who has really raided on a Mistweaver.
yeah.
And Storm, you've raided with him, so.
I've been with him through the highs and with the
And the
lows.
lows, and-
You should have saw when 5.1 hit.
Oh my god, I about had an emotional breakdown that night. I think I cried that
It was fine until he was a wreck until he discovered Chi Torpedo, and then he was fine.
night. Right? I was like, this is the worst class ever, I'm just gonna kill myself. Oh wait, Chi Torpedo. Anyways, so Mistweavers have been interesting, to say the least. As we've all known that the beginning of the expansion was a bit ridiculous because we were overtuned to obscene amounts that no other healer has ever seen in this game. I will say that much. I don't think I've ever seen situations where a healer is always consistently 30% above everybody. But now that things have been toned down, and that we aren't as ridiculous as we were, albeit a well-played Mistweaver can still do stupid things. Let's say,
Someone has a phone call.
sorry, I'm not picking that up, because I'm talking.
Kira was gonna say we could switch questions.
No, we're good. I feel like Mistweavers
Quick, what's
are
Miss' phone number? I'll
little
call.
bits. I feel like Mistweavers are in a very delicate spot. I feel like they are too hard to access for newer players. I feel I've had very, very in-depth conversations with newer players who felt like it was too hard for them, or that there was too much about it that didn't make sense. And I agree with them for the most part.
It did seem that they made Mistweavers really, really accessible for the people that have healed longer than if somebody was just coming to the game just to make a monk or has never healed before, even if they've been playing for a while.
Right. The thing that is plaguing Mistweavers right now is that our healing itself is good, but it still suffers from the lack of control that it always has. We've suffered from weak cooldowns, and a lot of things that just didn't surface until Blizzard decided to take God to our head and just make it just really depressing for everyone involved.
I think we've all had that happen to us at least at one point in our WoW
Yeah.
career.
I think it's because most of us just weren't expecting it this early in the expansion. I mean, we were expecting it, but,
Not
really
as hard as you were hit.
Yeah, exactly. Because we felt like it was already rough, and then they were like, well, let's just slap on this 30% mana nerf and have fun with that. The things that I see as of now are our tier 30 talents, which are being changed. They're good, but they're overshadowed by this little thing, as I mentioned, called Chi Torpedo, which is it's pointless to use other spells in a lot of situations. I know for me, all I ever really do is I keep up my Blackout Kick buff and my Tiger's Palm buff, and then I roll my Renewing Mists, and then I just Chi Torpedo everywhere. Because it's one of the only ways to actually consistently keep up with damage spread throughout the whole raid. And
I kind of have something to like expand on this once you get done. So
yeah, go ahead. I'm losing my train of thought because I'm just like getting upset and emotional over this.
I'm gonna go cry in a corner for
It's
a few
okay.
minutes.
It's okay.
Okay, let him go.
Yeah.
It'll be okay.
Supplies,
Mist needs a hug.
Priest too.
Who wants to give Mist a hug?
But
Don't touch him.
how do you feel about the idea of almost like Mistweaver and Disc both feel like very much like a rotational healer at this point, just because you have so much stuff you have to manage.
Yeah.
Like if you miss a Renewing Mist cooldown, like coming off a cooldown, it's gonna affect your HPS.
Yeah, you're gonna get crippled because of it.
Same thing with Disc. I mean,
Well, the difference
you have so much
with
stuff to
Disc-
manage at this point.
With the difference with Disc is you can just mash Prayer of Healing and do fine in most cases.
Yeah, Mistweaver, you miss something, you're
If
sad.
it's nerfed back down, it's going to be back to the point where Mistweaver is now, or so you'd assume.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, like, if I'm playing exceptionally well, if I'm not missing any cooldowns, if I am making sure to get my Chi Torpedo off right when damage goes out, I compete with our Disc Priests, and I'll compete with our Resto Shaman, and I will pass people up. But then we'll hit situations where I don't have Chi Torpedo anymore, and all I have is Chi Burst, which is strong, but not that strong, and I better hope that I have at least 15 Renewing Mists out, or my healing just gets tanked to shit, and I have to rely on Healing Rain to save my ass, as usual.
So, off of Mistweavers.
It's-
Before
Moving on.
Mist spends the rest of this episode talking about them. I don't mean to cut you off, Mist.
No,
but
I
you were-
understand. I'll make you suffer later. Let's go on.
Well, we'll talk about that in the IRC. Adam Forever wants to know in the chat, how do you feel that they've changed shamans from Cataclysm to Mists? Because he believes shamans have gone from... Stop scrolling, chat. Have gone from being known as the worst healer that can hold you back to being a very powerful healer in 10-mans and 25-mans. He wants to know, do we think issues have really been fixed, or have they just put band-aids on the mechanical specs? Or mechanical
It's a
issues
mix
of
of
it?
both, really.
I mean,
Having played Resto Shaman and 10-man Heroics,
right. But also,
really tied to our cooldowns right now.
we do have really
You have so many of them,
good
though.
cooldowns, but yeah, we did gain so many more cooldowns going into Mist. I mean, we have Ascendance, Healing Tide Totem. Of course, we have Spirit Link Totem still. Healing Rain,
Healing Stream.
Healing Stream. So it seems like they just kind of were like, here, take more cooldowns and now manage them.
I kind of feel like whenever I looked at the Shaman changes, they were like, okay, you guys have been complaining all through Cataclysm that you have absolutely nothing. We're just gonna throw like all of the shit at you, and you can shut up now. Like, that's how I feel like they've treated Resto Shaman, because if you look at the core of the Mistweaver, the core of the Shaman class, nothing has really changed, because Chain Heal is still very horrible in 10-man.
And not only that, but
Healing
we're tied to
Rain.
Healing Rain.
Healing
Fire.
Rain and Riptide are still your crutch. There's really not much that has changed other than they've given a bunch of cooldowns that do all of your
But
healing
also,
for you.
with the amount of cooldowns that we have now, it's also taking a bit more of a... It's taking a bit more of a better player to play a Shaman, because you're managing 4, 5, 6 cooldowns at the same time that you're trying to make sure that you are keeping your healing high and you're keeping whoever your targets are up.
Now, I wouldn't say that it's taking a better player, it's taking someone who's better at managing cooldowns. Because there's not much to the class other than drop Healing Rain, drop Healing Stream, drop Healing Tide. I
Chain
mean,
Heal
Storm
and
could
melee.
probably go into this a little bit more than I can, but just from what I've looked at from his logs, from what I've done on my Shaman recently, it's not that there's a lot of skill involved, it's just that you have to drop a lot of totems, and I don't know if that's a very good playstyle for the class, because it hasn't fixed the core of the actual healing spell problem. Storm can probably
whenever
elaborate way more than
30
we
to
can,
40% of your
let's let
healing-
him-
So first off, Rest of Shaman, except for the very start of Cataclysm, it did not hold you back. You had to be a better player than everyone else in your raid, unless you were in 25-man. At which point, you just had to hope. You beat everyone except Rest of Druids, because the Rest of Druids were stupid. But anyway.
Tell us how you really feel. Go on. Jeez.
I have memories of tier 12, so is Miss, but...
So do
That's
I.
a good
Yeah.
one.
I mean,
Okay, Adam
honestly,
Forever said, "Do you
we
think
didn't-
healing
Wait,
rate is compensating?"
wait. Let's
we
start.
didn't need these cooldowns because before this, like, if you know anything about tanking, how like brewmasters are right now, they're a tank that where if you play really correctly, they probably take the least damage out of any tank, but they have like no cooldowns to fall back on. That's kind of how Resto Shaman was before this expansion. Like you had to play really well, or you had to hope
You were
that
you were
your other
bottom of the
healers
barrel.
could save your raid, unless Spearling was available, and that's like LL Spearling.
Yeah.
This expansion, they gave us our cooldowns, and we kind of went from this class with no cooldowns to this class with, oh my god, cooldowns. And it's really nice to have them, but a lot of our healing is tied to it. And it does suck, but it's something we've been asking for. And
Yeah.
honestly,
That's
I
the
don't
thing.
mind having this much of my healing tied to my cooldowns because I personally, the way I gear my shaman is I go for heavy mastery builds, so I'm already focusing on the situations where I want to save the raid. So
I mean, I'm
having
the
my
same
cooldowns
way,
be
too,
stronger
so.
is like whatever. That's really nice.
Um,
Whereas it's like I
Adam
lose
Forever
average FPS.
also wants to know, like, what do we think about? Do we think healing raid compensating for most of a shaman's mastery, especially since it can hit 30 or healing, not mastery, especially since it can hit 30 to 40% of our healing done.
Healing Rain has been doing that since they put it into the grade.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like,
And it just got worse with.
and that's
Unleashed
kind of how the
Winds.
idea of on-the-ground healing has done. Like, it like, if you're playing with a guild that knows that, okay, if I stand in this giant blue puddle, we're not going to die. That's what it was put
It's
in the
also
game for.
become what
That's
most
but-
shamans do in LFR is put healing rain down and walk away.
And then AFK.
Yeah.
Yep.
I wouldn't say that Healing Rain is the problem. I don't think it's compensating for too much of the healing. I feel like Healing Rain is actually very invaluable. You could ask Storm. When we were working on Heroic Empress, there were times where all of our healers would get destroyed except for him, and Healing Rain would carry our raid for like 20% of the last 30%.
Yeah. It really
like
does.
it was really
Go mastery.
yeah, and because
Exactly.
Mastery plus Healing Rain makes ridiculous throughput. And I feel like I wouldn't change Healing Rain as it is. I would leave it alone. I would try to work on other areas of the class. Because my problem is, yes, we've been asking for cooldowns forever, but I don't think any of us expected them to give us what they did. So now it's just kind of like, oh, well, we have all this shit, and we don't really have to, min-max as much, or we don't have to play as extremely well as we did before. We can be a little bit lazier. And
I would
don't know if
honestly
I
be
agree with
interested to see raid tiers where there's going to be less burst damage, so that just to see how shamans would be able to handle that without cooldowns being ungodly because of how much of our throughput is actually tied to that.
Yeah.
If there was a fight where you didn't need to use cooldowns for burst healing, you would just use them rotation. Like on Heroic Well the Emperor, like there's never a point where I need to burst heal. So it's just like I found a cooldown's a cooldown, and it's whatever.
Yeah. Definitely.
I feel like Chain Hill still is a large mechanical issue with the class, though. Just
it
in-
always
especially in-
has been.
Well, that gets into raid sizes. Like,
yeah.
yeah.
And the issues
I mean,
that
that's what he
They,
was
they
asking
tried.
about,
They tried to tackle that
mechanical
with.
issues between 10 and 25. So
I mean, they tried to tackle that with the glyph, but I don't feel like that was the right way to do it.
putting a cooldown on it just there's not really because it's just
It's so
there's going to be
simple.
periods of sustained burst damage like Fang,
Right.
I feel like
8 to
If-
10 seconds of burst healing, and then
if they want to change that, that would be the glyph would be a very good way to tackle it. To turn Chain Heal into more of like you fire it off and it goes on cooldown, but it leaves it'll guarantee leave a more powerful Earth Living, or something that makes it
Yeah.
more appealing and more useful for Tin-Man Raiders. It's just
It feels very much like a Band-Aid right now.
And as we've repeated multiple times, it's still early. We're still feeling out the waters. I'm sure, though we did learn that it's very important that even though it's still early, that we should pound the issue home as often as possible, because we'll get into situations where it's like we're in Dragon Soul and still relying on intolerant currents for all of our region. Like, so you know, we don't want to end up in that situation again.
I don't will, but TC spam was just painful.
And to
Oh my god.
questions, no, I do not acknowledge the fact that 10 men is a real raid size. You be quiet. I'm kidding.
Yes, I'm gonna cry.
Okay, Miss, I'm being told to tell you to
Maybe.
talk less.
Yeah, Sparkles wants us to
No,
tell
I
you to
do-
talk less.
I'm glad someone said it.
I do think that 10 men needs a lot of love.
Who made this call,
so-
by the way?
Me.
Miss.
It is
That
my.
would explain a lot.
Not here.
He owns the call.
I control your fate. I control it.
I control the stream.
We still have the question about the Flame Shock glyph, by the way, guys.
Yeah.
The new one?
Yeah, it's
Yeah, the
in currently on PTR when you flame shock on a glyph, it heals you for 30% of the damage dealt. Do you think that'll be a viable self heal during drone time?
I think
Not
it's just this nice little extra thing. Like, LE glyph slots aren't really like there's like you have Leech
I
Lightning.
think Ellie's issue is more of lack of cooldowns. Just how they get blown up so easy. I don't think the extra healing from Flame Shock would necessarily save an Ellie from being bursted down.
I don't know if I would be using that on Resto.
And since Resto, your damage doesn't scale from PvP power, it would be completely out of the question on
Yeah.
whether you use it.
Yeah.
I would assume Enhance would probably be about the same for Ellie.
So I think we're actually bringing on one more person for the last couple of
okay.
minutes.
Really?
Miss is
For
gonna
you.
have fun with this person that we're bringing.
Sparkle, sparkle.
Are there any other questions?
Sparkle.
We've
Yeah.
covered,
The last one, I think one of them
Some of
was,
the one
why
on the
did
website,
you
too.
pick
we
the
covered
class
why
that you
did
were
we pick what we
playing
picked?
as?
on the website, Vera.
Hold on.
Sorry, go ahead.
It's the question about why did we pick the class that we picked.
Okay, yeah, I mean, so
Do we all want to
I
say
told
that?
my reason. I think Miss told his. So why did you guys
Well-
pick your classes?
The reason I did is because at the time, I actually had zero interest in healing, but having already leveled up one DPS at the beginning of Cataclysm, and if anybody remembers before the bribe bags, DPS queues were an hour plus, and I did not want to deal with that again, so I heard this could DPS and heal at the same time. Q as a healer, and then just DPS. But during that process, I started to really like it, and I had a friend that started tanking near the same time, and he said, I know you don't want to hear this, but you're actually a really good healer. And so yeah,
just want
I
to say
stayed.
real fast, let's welcome Sparkles to the show.
Being
Sparkle,
the
sparkle.
obligatory holy pally.
Yeah.
Hello, Sparkles. So
my
Sparkles, you wanted to tell
Being
us
late
something?
as usual. Because, our
Fashionably late.
Fashionably late.
So you wanted to tell Miss something, Sparkles?
Oh boy.
wait,
Let's hear it.
in specific? No.
Yeah.
I'm reading the IRC.
We thought we were going to get a fight.
Resto shamans are really good, and that's about it. I agree with you on that.
Anyway, so Sparkles, why did you choose a Holy Paladin?
Because Beacon is was OP, and still is OP. I mean, fuck, who doesn't love Beacon? Really, just it's an amazing kill.
That
Like,
brings up an interesting point. Sorry, do we have like are we trying to filter ourselves on language at all or
oh yeah,
anything?
yeah.
Don't think so.
I don't.
I'll do that anyway. Sorry, my bad. Anyhow, yeah.
being.
I was trying to. I'm
Back in Wrath when I started Valley,
It's Bacon of Light, isn't it?
yeah, Bacon was
Bacon.
or transferred, so that was pretty amazing. You pretty much killed both tanks up in 10 or 25 man. Just spamming whole light, basically. I mean, to be fair, it was really simple, but every healer was pretty much simple in Wrath.
Yeah.
It's may disagree or agree with me, I don't know.
I don't think there was really anything that was extremely hard in Wrath.
Like,
Not really.
didn't really keep up with healer balance in Wrath till the very end, but from all I know of Resto Shamans in Wrath, he basically spammed Chain Yo. So,
That sounds about right. Stack haste gems and chain nail.
but
Pretty
yeah,
much.
it's much why you roll Holy Valley, because Light changes so much about how you heal
Because
compared
Holy Light spam was so different.
Well, I mean, even now, like, you can just ignore the beacon target half the time. Or if you focus on them, you have
Never ignore the bacon.
you have to
Ignoring
use,
the
like,
bacon is blasphemous.
Bacon, not beacon.
You go to hell for ignoring the bacon. Just
Also,
putting that out there.
I hate upkeeping tank kills, like Life Bloom, Urshield. I just hate that. And I know Urshield's, like, really easy now, so is Life Bloom, but I just always hated that, so, yep.
So that's why he chose a Holy Paladin. Storm, why'd you choose a Shaman?
Chain heal. but more seriously, I always like the lore of shamans. Just you're this elemental warrior, and just it's really cool.
Really? The RP answer.
And I just, since I fell in love with healing, it's just like I want to be a Resto Shaman, and that's kind of how it is. And Chain Heal spam was fun.
Yeah.
It was. That's kind of why I rolled a shaman too. I won't lie.
So, who hasn't said why they chose their class? Vero, you haven't. So, Resto Druid, why?
Well, I picked a druid. The druid was the first character that I ever made when I played WoW, and my friend was explaining each class and like what everything does. And when you got to druid, who's basically like, druid can be a night elf or a tauren, and you can turn into a cat and a bear, and you can heal, and you can turn into a tree and a chicken. And I was like, I'm sold. Okay.
Good for the ERP,
But the funny
wasn't
thing
it?
is, when I was
Yes.
leveling my druid,
Sorry.
I didn't actually use any of my forms until he told me to, and I was like, oh, okay.
Wow,
And so
you
then
know
after he told me I could be in bear form all I wanted, that's pretty much all I was doing, was in bear form running around questing.
Oh my god.
I
At like
can't
level
say-
10.
I'm
When
sure
I
you're
got
an
it.
amazing healer as a bear.
Yeah, totally.
Well, I didn't heal. I didn't heal
Frenzied
until
region.
after. That's when I learned.
I think,
Yeah, go ahead.
Is it time for milk?
yeah,
It's fine
I
for
think
me.
Yep.
so.
Anyone have cookies?
I want cookies.
Talking about cookies.
Okay, I'll go next, I guess.
Go
With
ahead.
Go
mine.
ahead, Milk.
Okay.
go.
Back in Wrath and early Kata, I actually mained as a Resto Druid, and it just got to the point where I got so bored with just hot healing and rerolling my life blooms and all that stuff. I was just like, I needed something else. So I had a priest, and I decided to instead pop over, try out Holy for once. And the toolkit in that, holy crap, I loved it. Just so many spells to press and just so many different things to do and different timings of different spells. And I was in love from that moment on, and I really haven't looked back.
Basically, because you had something other to do than reduce spam.
Yeah,
Which, in
basically.
its own way, was fun. Kind of.
Look,
Not really.
Resto
If you
Druid
wanted to go watch TV while healing a raid. it was
Resto
fun.
Druid
And I did.
Now,
was
Sparkle. We can go back far enough in time where it was just circle of healing spam.
the peak of Resto Druid fun was in Burning Crusade when they introduced haste. Because when they introduced haste, you started getting these fun little projects like, I think I could simultaneously roll 7 life blooms at the same time, while also reju blanketing the whole raid and casting regrowth. Let's see how
While
this
I'm
works
cooking
out.
while I'm cooking soup.
Exactly. So
Is
that's-
anyone else healing? Am I doing all the healing?
No, I remember the first night I managed to properly do it. I broke like 2 million healing on, I think, Illidari Council.
Which was a lot back then.
Which was, and our other resto druid was like, nah, don't worry, I'll beat you. And lo and behold, she did, and I mean, it was just... I feel like I missed that most about healing in a resto druid, was finding fun things like that to do. You don't really see that much with classes, other than actually Mistweaver is probably the closest they've been since that point in time.
There's a lot of stuff to do, optimize on a shaman, but I guess
Not to that level.
no, not really. But I would be really hesitant to say like recalling totems is part of skill because I mean,
It's
yeah,
just
I'd be
one
really
thing to
it's-
watch.
it's watching a
the
timer.
It's
winner.
just a timer to watch.
yeah. But to be fair, that's like all skill though. Yeah, with skill, you just watch different timers. Like
Yeah,
Resto Shaman, you
you
just
can
have
pretty
so
much-
much to watch.
You can sum up this entire game in watching timers and pressing buttons. I mean,
Basically. I mean,
Yeah.
Resto Shaman does have a lot now, so I think in terms of like a skill floor and cap, Resto Shamans are one of the more diverse ones out of the healers. Definitely Mistweavers, because just because they're a new spec, like there's so many people just playing it horribly wrong. Like people who will insist you're not supposed to jab or anything, and it's just like, no.
that's
What about those flash heal holy priests? I'm just very depressed about
Oh
that.
god.
You mean when
Yeah,
Flash Heal
Flash
used
Heal
to be like the
disagrees.
main heal in a priest's healing group shit thing? Yeah.
Healing kit.
yeah.
Yeah.
I
why am
healed with
ooh.
one in Firelands that still thought it was her. Good
Not
deal.
to jump off of this topic, but we did get a question about Holy Priests a minute ago from chat.
Oh.
If I can find
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, it's the one about the chakras.
it.
How do you feel about Holy Word Sanctuary or ever the Sanctuary versus
is
the Generate?
so underwhelming compared to what Healing Rain is.
I honestly don't ever cast it unless everyone is stacked, or at least, yeah.
Well, you do 10
Honestly, at this point in rating, it's not scaling well enough that it overtakes Rejuve Rolling and Serenity. So
Yeah. There's just so many other. It costs too much mana for how little it heals.
Yeah.
and that's the issue with it.
Yeah. So if
whenever you can roll Rejuve or
when it comes to
Renew.
Serenity, I'll only pop into Serenity if like the tank needs a lot of healing or it's really squishy.
So, just for a little bit of a joke, because we're coming to the end of our episode here, sadly. What was that?
Oh.
QQ Emo Kitty says that she's seen people incapable of managing Earth Shield. So have I.
Okay, last LFR I was in, Earthshield, I swear to God, was always on DPS, never the tank.
I actually got
Oh my
into
God.
I actually got into a LFR with 4 Resto Shamans, and, like 3 others, including myself, and the other 3 Resto Shamans had Earth Shields on their own. And then both tanks were asking me for Earth Shield, and I'm like, I can only Earth Shield one of you. Talk to the 2 people Earth Shielding themselves.
I had to whisper them, like, please
Wow.
put Earthshield
Wait,
on.
doesn't that
Wait, they're
override-
Earth shielding themselves?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
That,
But it
the
Water
A doesn't
Shield.
give you
Yes,
any mana
which
back,
means
and
they don't have water shield. Yes.
Speaking of that, like, it makes me more mad than anything that Holy Pallies, some really bad Holy Pallies, never beacon anyone except the tank. Considering it's off the GCD if you
GCD,
click
you
it,
can
which you
beacon
pretty
swap.
much should, it's just like, no, why? No.
I think Earthshield might be the thing I missed the most about Shaman though,
I
because
was having a second Earth Shield.
as Zero mentioned, I played with him in ICC, I still do, but he played an Enhancement Shaman at that time, and I played a Resto Shaman at that time, and most of his damage was tied to having Earth Shield up, or not Earth Shield, Lightning
boy.
Shield up, right? And I was like, no, I think I'm gonna Earth Shield you and hope you don't realize it.
But going back to Holy Paladins not beaconing people, I actually know a Holy Paladin that instead of beaconing the other tank on Garajal, he'll beacon somebody that gets Voodoo Dot along with the tank, which, I mean, that's gotta be a good idea.
That is.
It's an okay
Good
idea.
idea.
It's a possible strategy since, I mean, if you're direct healing the tank, he's gonna, like, all the voodoo dolls are gonna take less damage, but on Garajal specifically, you should be swapping around Beacon a lot.
Yeah.
Like, whenever I go into Spirit Realm, I always put it on myself, since I'm the most reliable person to get heals from myself, obviously.
Exactly.
Right.
Because everyone else can, leave whenever the heck they want. So, yeah, and then when you go out, well, personally, I've been putting it on the tank, but it really, I wouldn't say it doesn't matter, but it really depends on your healing style. Like,
I
I'll
think putting it
direct
on the
heal
DPS
all the time.
lets you
So.
benefit from your mastery a little more.
Yeah, but you still direct heal the tank. You have plenty of time to direct heal the tank, even on heroic. So, yeah.
But I think we're actually going to be nearing the end here. Yeah, because it's been an hour and a half, and
Sexy time is over.
we're starting to run low on questions, and I don't think
And we're
anyone
now
is
all
going
just
to-
babbling and rambling.
Which Miss is fine with.
Yeah, I do that all the time. That's
We
my
know
thing.
this.
True story.
But do we have any closing statements we want to make?
Get out there, and if you're not a healer and you want to try it, try it. It's not as scary as it
Yes,
sounds.
healing is fun. And
Spread the word about
I
this
want
thing,
to buy a
too.
druid.
Run with people you trust, for one, if you are starting out.
Follow us on
Yes.
Twitter.
Also,
Bear, can we get links up?
this
Yeah, I'm
is
doing
this
it
is
right now.
definitely a
She's doing the
PSA because I know my colleagues here get really annoyed with it. Don't go to the forums and make threads asking what healer you should play.
Yeah.
God.
Play around with it.
Please
There's a
don't.
thread for that, right at the top.
There's-
We'll give you troll
I'm pretty sure
answers.
there's a thread about that. You're-
Just to warn you, though, if we see those threads, any of us in this podcast, we will start making fun of you in the thread. No offense, but that's just something that we do.
If
Yeah.
you make a one that says, what should I play for PvP, I'll let me go one that says, Holy Priest, go.
yeah.
Honestly,
It's
we
better-
can have a whole episode about it,
Yeah.
what
Can
the
talk
pros
about
and
the
cons.
strengths of each class, yeah.
Since
Also-
it's still a discussion you can have. It's just that if you post it on the forums, you other people have talked about it so much.
Yeah.
It's insane.
You can
Hey now,
you can
Spirit
spend-
Bomb's OP.
You can definitely look at other threads about classes without having to ask us, and
Also, don't say
make adult
healers are
decisions
OP
for
in
yourself.
PvP.
Well, I think we should probably cut this off, so... Bye! Thanks, everyone,
Thank you guys for
tuning in.
coming.
Thanks for
Bye.
tuning in. I linked everything so you can follow us. Our next episode will be on the 25th.
And if you want to actually talk
Submit
to
questions.
if you want to actually talk to any of us, a lot of us hang out in our IRC almost the entire time we're on our computer. So
Which I linked, so if you still want to talk to us, we'll be
Most
over
time I'll
there.
be
Yeah.
in the
I'm at the Hill
IRC and
IRC.
not actually on WoW.
all right,
Yeah.
thanks for tuning in,
This is
guys.
the IRC.
Thanks for coming. Bye, everyone.